JoJo Part 3 is probably the most iconic JoJo of the franchise. I mean, there's a reason why Jotaro comes back. There's a reason why Jotaro comes back constantly in every future part. It is, to me, I wouldn't have known about JoJo if it wasn't for JoJo Part 3, because I was one of the few people that actually watched the original OVAs of JoJo before JoJo got adapted into like the anime that it is now by David Productions. Oh, timed. Oh, I think it's mid. I think it's true mid. I think it's true mid. It stands on the level of My Hero Academia, Part 1 JoJo, and Dragon Ball. It is JoJo Part 3. Okay. If it was half the length that it was, it would be above mid. If it was half the length that it was. But it is too dragged out. It is too dragged out. Unfortunately, I think it is too dragged out. What I love about JoJo Part 3 is that it's just a road trip with the boys. I love the feeling that's encapsulated where you just go on a road trip with the boys and you get invested, and by the end of the road trip, you're fucking crying about who lives and who dies because you're going to the end of this journey. And another thing that I think really stands out about Part 3 is that there are few characters in anime that emit final boss energy as much as Dio Part 3, okay? Dio Part 3 is the epitome of final boss, okay? He is... When you see Dio in Cairo, he's been hyped up so much that you think there is nothing that could possibly meet the hype of the first time you meet Dio. You meet Dio in Egypt, but he completely encapsulates the hype. He completely meets it, and it's an excellent final fight, and it's an excellent final battle. But just the lead up to that battle, is so long and is so dragged out. And there are, like, I feel like there are two things that really make JoJo Part 3 true mid. Okay. Number one is I feel like the stand powers just weren't as interesting as, you know, as stand powers in future parts, unfortunately. I don't think, like, I think this is the part where stands were introduced, and it feels like Araki was still feeling himself in terms of what to do with stands and stand powers. So some of the early stands just felt like very normal anime powers. They didn't feel like they were breaking your minds like in future parts. So, like, to me, the stand powers were just less interesting. And the second thing is that it felt way too Monster of the Week. And I feel like Monster of the Week format has not aged well at all. In future parts, it really felt more like every encounter felt more prevalent to an ongoing plot, where this one just felt like it was just... It basically depended on how interesting the fight was, and not every fight was interesting. A lot of Part 3, to me, is forgettable. I think Part 2 is more memorable than Part 3. But I feel like Part 3 did really set the stage for future JoJo parts. And that's why, to me, Part 3 is true mid for shonen. It's true mid for shonen, okay? Like, to me, like, I will say my least favorite parts of JoJo have been Part 1 and Part 3. Okay, so the lowest JoJo ever gets for me, the lowest it ever gets, is just okay. It's just true mid. That's the lowest it gets. Like, there are some great moments in part 3. There's, you know, there's the final fight. I think basically when they get to Egypt, it's fucking great. It's fucking great. But unfortunately, the middle section of getting to Egypt is just so dragged out. So if it was half the length, like I said, it would probably be above mid. Oh god, I'm just, am I exposed? I'm just looking at this. Seems like I was right, boys. 5-hour JoJo discussion stream. This is looking quite bad. This is looking quite bad right now because I've got 2 JoJo parts in true mid. I'm being outed as a fake JoJo fan. Oh no. Guys, maybe I don't suck as much dick as you thought I did. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. Maybe I've never seen a dick in my life. I'm sorry. I'm a real JoJo fan, okay? I'm a real JoJo fan.